Good evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Ryan Backman, Executive Director and founder of Project Cold Case. Joining me today is Lorena Inclán, Action News Jax. How are you, Lorena?
Hey, good. How are you, Ryan? So good to see you virtually. We haven't seen each other in person in forever, but it's good to at least put eyes on you virtually.
I know. It's great to see you. Know that you're happy, healthy, see your smile. I worry about people right now. Being stuck home or struggling financially or health-wise. So it's good to be able to check in on our friends and make sure everybody's doing well. So glad to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about a double homicide, a double murder in St. Augustine, Florida, St. Johns County. St. Johns County Sheriff's Office is the investigating agency, right? Or is it? Yeah.
It started with St. Augustine Police, but they joined with the Sheriff's Office, and they're teaming up on this now.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So this is, you've already done a story on this. We'll show your Action News segment that you ran. Do you remember when you ran it? I'm trying to remember.
I have it here. Let's see. It was 2019. Oh, it was last year, February of last year.
February of last year. So it's been over a year now since you've run your story. We did a spotlight on our page, a written spotlight. Around a little bit after you ran your story, because we included, your video and everything. We did one in March 2019. We used our partnership with University of North Florida and did a written version, interviewed Charles Durden's mother, which you did as well. So these two victims, Charles Durden Sr. and Steffon Larry, are friends. Their car is literally set on fire. Like they're murdered and then they're in the same car and then set on fire. And I think probably what we should do is show your segment so that so our viewers, people that are watching along with us, will know a little bit of the story, and then we can talk about it a little more, because something happened recently with this story, and we want to make sure that we get the information back out there. So here we're going to show you guys the segment that Lorena did for Action News Jax, February 2019. So watch that, and then we'll come back and talk more about it.
Not much was left of this black Dodge Journey that was parked in West Augustine on November 16, 2016. St. Augustine Police Department Corporal Michael Ochkai was one of the first to arrive.
Fire rescue came, put out the fire, and that's when it was discovered that 2 bodies were inside.
The bodies belonged to 27-year-old Charles Durden and 26-year-old Steffon Larry, 2 friends who had been shot to death, their bodies then set on fire.
What does that say, I guess, about the suspect or suspects?
They're pretty cold and calculating, trying to definitely cover their tracks.
Detective Corporal Samantha English of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office is also working the case alongside Ochkai. For nearly 2 years, this case has haunted them.
She said they can't give up. They refuse to give up.
This is where Annette Durden and her family go to mourn her son Charles, who went by juvie. His body was so badly burned, Durden only has his ashes.
They took the privilege away from me, laying my child body to rest. I didn't get to do that.
This marker at the corner of Spring Street and Fred Waters Way has a small summary of the case to help generate leads. Neighbors here remember this case. Maybe one of them even saw what happened. But detectives are running into a big problem because people are not speaking up, despite there being a reward of up to $5,000 on this case.
Somebody, more than one I believe, knows what happened to Charles and Steffon and how they can go to sleep at night knowing that, whether they were involved or not. It blows my mind.
Durden often thinks about whether she may know the killer and not realize it.
Did I speak to my son killer at the visual? Did my son killer come around there to my house?
Were they at
and
my house?
Put their arms around me for support?
Detectives Ochkai and English showed us one of the 2 massive files they have on the case. For them, solving one of the most heinous crimes to ever hit St. Augustine would mean putting the public's mind at ease. But most of all, it would mean giving the families closure.
To be able to tell them, like, we have them. And not only do we have them, but we have enough to make them pay for what they did.
Lorena, Inclán, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
If you know anything that can help police solve this or other unsolved murders, call Crime Stoppers at 888-277-TIPS. You can stay anonymous. And we invite you to listen to the Project Cold Case podcast. Go to actionnewsjax.com and look for the Project Cold Case icon.
All right, so now we're back. You've seen the segment about Charles Durden and Steffon Larry. Lorena, I always like to share kind of the personal side of these stories, like where you actually, you're condensing your interview into, a news segment. But even like during the setup of the cameras and, microphones, you are interacting with these families, you're talking with these survivors and asking them and kind of getting a glimpse into, their world. And a lot of that stuff doesn't make it onto the, to the segment because it's just conversation. You do a great job of just building rapport with these families and getting them to trust you. And a lot of that is done before the cameras are rolling. Tell us a little bit about that. And then maybe in this case specifically.
That's absolutely right. It was interesting because when we got to interview Annette, Charles' mom, she was a little bit late coming to the interview, which was totally understandable because I understand that there was she struggles. I mean, it was her son's was murdered, and all she got were his ashes because his body was burned. So completely understandable that it took a little bit of time to sort of warm up to the idea of speaking with me, and I completely get that. So yeah, I mean, that's all part of it too. I mean, I'm there on their time. I'm on there on the family's time. I'm not trying to rush them through it or anything. So it was one of those interviews, even though the story was like 2 minutes long, the interview took a very long time. Yeah. And it's difficult to try to, condense everything into 2 minutes when we had such a long conversation. But it was, it definitely called my attention how she didn't show up by herself. She had such a great support system. She had, I believe it was Charles' aunt as well, and other family. And that goes to show that he, was really well known in that neighborhood. He grew up in West Augustine. Yeah. A lot of people are related to each other in that block there. And one of the things that really struck me, what she said in our conversation, was that she worries, or she thinks about how she might have met or spoken to her child's killer, and she had no idea because nobody knows who that person is. So she worries about, like, did this person hug me at the vigil? And that was so gut wrenching because you don't trust people around you all of a sudden, right? Like, who could it have been? So that adds to the trauma. She lost her son in a horrific way. She doesn't know who the killer is. The killer could very much be in that neighborhood. So it was evident that, I needed to take my time with her. Some family members come out and just get straight to the point. But it was clear that, she's been struggling so much, and it's heart-wrenching
Yeah.
to see a mom who all she wants is to know what happened to her son. That's all she wants.
Yeah.
And I tried to convey that in the story. I hope I did a good job.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And I think, it's why I like to bring that part up for people that don't understand or all they see is the story. And like, there's so much more that goes into it than that. And there's building these relationships and getting a family to open up to you and to trust you to tell that story, and to do that knowing that you can't possibly tell, a person's whole life in a 2-minute, segment. And so you really have to have good content and good information. And, what can't be lost is that at the end of the day, this is an unsolved murder, still double murder. So there's 2 families that are struggling with this. And, the goal is to get the information out there and hope that someone will come forward.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to link up with Steffon's family. I tried, I reached out, and it just, we weren't able to coordinate speaking with them. And I don't believe that they're local. If I'm not mistaken, I think they live outside of Florida.
Yeah.
But they're suffering too. So it's 2 family members, and they were like 2 best friends, who were together, and they were shot, and then their bodies were burned. So whoever did it was trying to clear their tracks.
Yeah, and we had in our written spotlight that we teamed up with a student at University of North Florida to write. There was this thing I was looking at today where Annette says that having to identify her son, like she had to basically identify him based on a watch and a ring that were on a skeleton, that were just it's just the trauma that family has experienced, both those families have experienced, is really, really heartbreaking.
And that neighborhood and the extended family.
Yeah.
Because there was an aunt there in the interview with Annette. Unfortunately, we couldn't put too much of her sound in there. We had to keep it tight, TV constraints and things. So I wanted to make sure to get Annette in there, but the aunt is suffering too. I mean, it's not just Annette; it's the entire family and the neighborhood. This is a crime that nobody there has ever been able to forget. Not even the detectives, nobody, because this doesn't happen in St. Augustine. Right. That was, St. Augustine, for those people watching us who have never been there, is a tiny historic town that you just don't hear about this happening there. It's not a big city. It really doesn't have a lot of violence. So for this to happen in St. Augustine, number one was shocking. That was right off the bat was shocking. But then to hear the details, it was just mind blowing.
Yeah, it was so. I know even here for us, just a little bit north in Jacksonville, where we do deal with a lot more violence and we do see a lot more crime. We don't see stuff like this often, where 2 people are murdered, together, and then their car set on fire, to try to cover it up. I can't remember. Did they say how they were killed? Did they ever?
Yes. So they were shot. They were shot, and then their bodies burned. The car itself was burned with their bodies in it. Yeah. And the detectives it turned every rock. Like, they were so thorough. It comes down to people don't want to talk. Yeah. And people know, there are people, well, one of the detectives, Detective English, she said she believes more than one person knows, and they just don't want to come forward. And that's the missing link. It's not even, they have so much evidence, right. But this person burning the car and the victims in it, got rid of a lot of, potential DNA or things. I'm not a forensic expert, but it was difficult for them to trace anything back. So it comes down to people speaking up. That's what they need. And that's why 2 months ago, they came out and said, we need the original tipsters to come forward, which we'll talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
more. But that was interesting when they came out with that, right, Ryan?
And that's kind of why we wanted to bring this story back in. I mean, we do this with all the cases that you feature. If your feature doesn't lead to movement in the case, then we bring it back here on Facebook Live and try to use social media to get it back out there in the public. And so, like you said, just a couple months ago, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office sent out a press release about this case saying, hey, look, the people that did come forward, we need you to come back forward because there's something they believe that they have the information. They know they have information. They believe that there's something more that they could provide that could be the answers that are needed in this case to resolve it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it was a very interesting, I have the statement here.
Yeah.
And it was the way that it was worded was really interesting. When I saw it, I was like, that's an interesting way to ask for information because they were very intentional with their words.
Tell me.
And if I could read it here, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Before you do tell me, like, what was it like when that crossed your desk? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because you are vested in this case. You have, you've done a story on this case. You've met with, one of the victim's mothers and aunts. You've, you know that there's another victim and there's family. You've stood in that neighborhood. I think they have a little plaque up there now where the car was burned. Like there's, and you're vested in this case. So when a press release crosses your desk and it says Charles Durden and Steffon Larry, I mean, does your heart stop for a second? Like,
for sure. I mean, immediately I was already on another story that day, so I couldn't leave that story. But as soon as I came out, I sent it to the entire newsroom and I wrote "big deal" in the email. I'm like, we need to get this in. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
This is a case that has haunted detectives in St. Johns County for years, and they potentially are getting closer. We need to put this in. So they, I think that message got through loud and clear to my managers, and they put it in the newscast right away.
Yeah.
When I saw both of their names, it's one of those stories that I was telling you before we came on. It was probably one of the most impactful stories that I've covered because, as people saw in the story, you could feel Annette's pain.
Yeah.
I'm not a mom, and I could feel her pain, and she really, I think, resonated with a lot of people because you could just tell she's struggling, understandably so. It's her son, regardless of the circumstances of what led up to it. It's still her baby, and somebody took him from her and she has no idea who this person is or why. Right. So it was, when that came through, I immediately tweeted it. I shared it. I think I sent it to you. I'm like, have you seen this?
Yeah, you did. I mean, I get an email from you like, have you seen this? And I hadn't, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what? But share it with us, for those watching that this is what came across your desk from the sheriff's office.
Yes. So I have it here on the Action News Jax website. So it says, detectives said that they received many anonymous tips related to the murders, but, quote, probable cause could not be obtained to effect an arrest in this case, according to the police. After further review of information in the case, detectives are asking for additional information from the anonymous tipsters. This additional information could be critical for solving the case. According to investigators, the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office said, quote, detectives are asking those original tipsters and anyone who may have had information at the time or who may have heard anything related to the murders since that time to contact the St. Johns County Major Crimes Unit by calling Detective John Dees 904-209-2130. They're asking for the original tipsters who made the first phone calls on this back in 2016 to call. Obviously other people too, but they specifically mentioned original tipsters. They want those people to come forward.
And when they say probable cause, so police need probable cause to make an arrest, but the state attorney's office, needs proof, a higher burden of proof to actually indict and charge a suspect with murder. But you can't make an arrest without probable cause. And so to me, and again, this is just speculation, but I think what they're saying is people were calling with identities of individuals, but they weren't calling with proof that those names were connected to the case. Like they don't have, that's what they need is how do you know that
Right.
person is connected? You know what I mean?
Right.
What is it about that person? And it's just speculation, but when they mention like there wasn't probable cause to effect an arrest, because we get this a lot with families. They say, well, law enforcement knows who did it. And I don't know if that's exactly the case here, but I'm kind of assuming that there might be people out there that have said, well, I told the police it was so-and-so, but telling the police it's so-and-so and the police having probable cause to make an arrest are two different things. And then also beyond that is being able to charge somebody. You have to have that evidence. You have to have proof. You
Right.
know?
And there's a reason for that because you don't want to put an innocent person in jail.
Right.
And we know that happens
Yeah.
in our country sometimes. But detectives try their best to make sure there is absolutely no doubt that this person did it. And sometimes I deal with that as a journalist too in a different level, but people will come to me with X company did this. And I'm like, okay, how do we prove it? I mean, I can't just go on TV and accuse a company or a person of doing something without having any proof whatsoever. I mean, we can't do that.
No.
So it's a much higher burden for law enforcement officers.
Absolutely. And like even in your example, like you're going to go follow up with that company. You can't just go out and start saying things that are true. Well, we don't have Charles and Steffon to talk to anymore, to corroborate. So there has to be physical evidence or some kind of, something that allows, investigators to prove what is being said. And again, I'm speculating here, but from my experience, I think what's happening is people are probably calling up and saying it was so-and-so. But they're not saying, and I know it was so-and-so because I was with him, because he came to my house and had burns all over his hand, or body.
Right.
Like there's got to be something out there that would help solve this case. And investigators believe that one of those original callers has that bit of information. They need him to just call back and be a little more specific.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had never really seen, and I've been doing news for a long time and you've seen different press releases for years. I had never seen such a specific wording in the press release. I mean, you could tell that the detective really took their time writing this and making sure that the message was clear. Yeah. They're reaching out to the original tipsters. And of course, you have to say, it's not, we just don't want to hear about the original tipsters. If you have something, come forward too. But the original ones from 2016, please call us again. Because that's the thing too. And this is proof, Ryan, that you do remain anonymous. Because why would this press release come out if they just had the cell phone number of the original tipster and be like, hey, Bob, come into the office again. They don't know who this person is.
No,
this is proof right there.
And we're working. We're going to get Wiley Hodges from First Coast Crime Stoppers in to do one of these Facebook Lives in the coming weeks. And that's always the question he gets. He has to answer is it really anonymous? And you're right. I'm going to bring this up when I talk to him because this is the proof. If they knew who you were, they would just go to these people's house and say, hey, remember that tip you called in 4 years ago?
Right.
Like we need more information. And obviously.
Absolutely. It just dawned on me now because everybody's so scared. Oh, it doesn't. And this is proof that it is. They don't know who this person is.
Absolutely.
And they need to talk to this person. Yeah.
And that's why, Crime Stoppers is a great tool, but that's why it sometimes doesn't equal an arrest is because there's no conversation. It's one person saying, whatever their lead is, whatever their tip is, but there's no way for the detective to follow up and say, okay, how do you know that? Or, where does that person live? Or
correct.
So
can you imagine if it was detectives in the phone bank receiving the anonymous tip? Like there would be so many more follow-up questions. But I don't really, I would love to go into one of those phone banks I think it's in Canada. Maybe I'll pitch that story to my manager. Send me to Canada so I can see what this is like.
That would be great.
What kind of questions are asked? Yeah.
But I'm going to ask Wiley that too. Like, is there a conversation or is it literally just like, okay, tell me what you know? You know what I mean? And then they just type it and then that's it with no follow-up. Because I think I've heard people say, look, I've given detectives this information. I've called Crime Stoppers with this information. And they've never arrested the person. And I always say, like, just because you say that doesn't make it provable. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so there
Right.
has to be more. There has to be something to it.
And speaking with these detectives, Ryan, because you saw this too, they want nothing more than to solve this case. Like, and just as much as I saw from Annette's reaction and the way that she was speaking, how much it's hurting her,
Yeah.
I could see it from the detectives too. Like they are haunted by this case because again, this is not these aren't the cases that come by their desk in St. Augustine.
Right.
This is not something they are used to dealing with. They're not from a big city. So this is the two detectives on this case are when I asked them, what would it mean to you to be able to tell the family that you got this person? Like they both were like, they gave a sigh. They were like, oh my gosh, it would mean so much. Like they feel it. They feel it too, you know, and they really want to solve this case. And for everybody out there who thinks, well, they're not really worried about this case because why would they care about this person, XYZ, whatever. No, they do care because it's their community. They live there too.
Right. I mean, again, we talk about the kind of the details of the story with these two men being shot and then set the car set on fire to cover it up like that. Whoever did that is not the type of person you want in your neighborhood, living in your community. So it's important to them too, to get that person off the street.
Correct.
Persons,
correct.
You know, so,
yeah.
Well,
I hope that people come forward.
Yeah. I hope that we reach, you know, we do so much to help with what we can control, but there's so much out of our control. You know, you can't control who had the news on, you know, that night when that press release came out and you did the follow up and Action News Jax did the follow up, and we can't control who's going to watch, you know, this video. We're going to ask the family to share it. We'll ask all of our supporters and survivors to share it. Because again, we got to keep getting the information out there until it reaches the right person, which in this case, we've got to reach those original, you know, callers and try to get them to call back with more information. You know, if they called in 2014, or was it 16? Was it 2016?
16.
Yeah, 4 years ago. Lots of things have changed. You know, maybe it was their neighbor back then, and now that person's moved away, and they feel a little more comfortable, you know, giving a little more information. You know, I mean, obviously the detectives are seeking specific information from specific callers and still need more information from anybody that has it. But hopefully, you know, this Facebook Live will reach those people. We'll continue to share it and try to get it out there, because the next press release I want to come across your desk that has Charles Durden and Steffon Larry's name on it. I wanted to say, you know, that an
arrest made.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I want
that would be so huge.
Yeah, I want you to have that follow up with Annette and beyond, and figure out, you know, like, and let's offer them that support that then they need, you know, once that happens. So, you know, hopefully that's where we end up, you know, after sharing this today. So
absolutely. And I remember too, that day that we met up with Annette, a former victims advocate in your office, went there too, Patty. Like she, and it was, she needed that support too. So it was, you know, kudos to your office for. And I remember Patty was out there for hours in the heat. Because it was, I think it was in the summer. It was, it was February, but you know, it's hot in Florida.
Yeah, so hot.
But I remember we were outside the entire time, and she really helped Annette feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I credit more what Patty did than me, because she really helped her feel at ease with the interview and helping navigate what was about to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's again one of those services that we try to provide when we, you know, ask you to do an interview. We always talk to these families before, during, and after, and make sure they're comfortable. We've done a lot of interviews in our office just to allow, you know, a feeling of comfort for the families, because most people haven't stood in front of a camera and told the story of their loved one's murder, and it is hard, and you know, it brings up grief and anxiety and stress, and and as much as they want to share the information, it's still very difficult for them, you know. So we do offer those services, try to help them through that process as well. And you know, we'll obviously, you know, be letting the family know that we're gonna, you know, we're sharing this, and they'll hopefully be able to share it on their social media as well, so that they can,
Yes,
reach the
I
right
hope so too. And if Annette's watching, I really, really pray that you can find the answers you're looking for. I mean, you deserve to know what happened to your son and Steffon Larry's family as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lorena, for joining us
Thank you.
and sharing the story, and always being willing to talk to these families. I know it's not always easy for you either, because you're literally asking families to relive the worst day of their life every time that you interview them. But
It's emotionally draining on
Yeah.
both sides. It is, but it's important. And I hope that they see that. And I hope that after each interview, they feel a little bit better. I'm not going to bring back their loved one, but talking helps.
It does. I mean, most of these families, it's reliving their worst day, but it's always better to be able to share your loved one's story than to think that nobody cares and nobody wants to hear it. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? So that's what we do. That's what you do, and we appreciate you for it. And one day soon we will see each other in person. I don't know when.
Yes, I hope.
Well, thank you.
I can't wait for this to be over, but it'll better days ahead for sure.
Well, until then, thanks for joining us. We'll get with you again soon on doing another Facebook Live and checking in with people. We were talking around the office about having you talk about just how COVID has impacted your job, and like we haven't been able to do new stories.
And
there was a big span where we weren't even able to do any cold case stories. So
absolutely. And this is that's a great conversation, because detectives are still working. That's not, that hasn't stopped, but in terms of how we cover stories, it's been a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Lorena, and thank everybody for joining us tonight. We will be back next week with another Facebook Live. And again, go to our website, projectcoldcase.org. Share our social media post. Follow Lorena as well on what's your social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at Lorena AN Jax, AN for Action News. And then I'm on Facebook, Lorena Inclán, like my name down there, and then Action News Jax. So all together, long, but you'll find me that way.
You'll find her. Follow her, because she is always sharing cold case stories and always participating and raising awareness for those cases, which we really appreciate. And that's how we're going to reach people. That's the way they want to see it now, is in social media.
Yep, that's true. That's true. It reaches the masses that way.
All right, Lorena. Well, you have a great one. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you.
Thank you, Ryan. Have a great week.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.